August 4, 2019, the central government imposed a lockdown on Kashmir and placed all regional leaders under arrest. August 5, 2019, the government revoked the state's special status under Article 370. Thousands of troops were moved into the valley. Soon after, the state of Jammu and Kashmir ceased to exist and was converted into two union territories. Lockdowns, clampdowns, internet shutdowns, large-scale arrests followed. Militants and troops and policemen died in successive encounters. Kashmir was engulfed by fear and intimidation. The world reacted sporadically and slowly, more systematically. On June 23, 2021, Prime Minister Narendra Modi called a meeting of leaders from Jammu and Kashmir. The list included the Gupkar Alliance, a conglomeration of former chief ministers and regional political parties whose leaders had been amongst those arrested and isolated. At the 3.5-hour meeting, the Gupkar parties and the Congress asked for restoration of statehood and Article 370. Prime Minister Modi asked them first to support the delimitation process. He remained non-committal about statehood but did not rule it out either.
Hello everyone. This is our new show, a weekly show, and who better to start it off with than Air Vice Marshal Kapil, retired, and obviously the best person to have a little discussion on the recent developments in Kashmir with. One, because he is former military. Two, because he is from Kashmir. Three, because he has a heart and a conscience. And fourth, because he is objective. So welcome, Air Vice Marshal, and can we start by talking about what happened yesterday and what is your take on it?
First of all, congratulations, Seema, for starting a new weekly series. We wish you all the best in your endeavors. Yesterday's meeting has multiple dimensions. Let me put it across and point from very, very quickly. One is a legitimization effort on the part of the union government for the actions it has taken on 5th of August 2019. It's a kind of a meeting between the humiliators and the humiliated. So you can know what you're expecting. Of course, having exhausted all the options, including planting new political forces, doing engineering on the ground, the fact is the center and the union government has realized that mainstream political parties have representation. They represent the ground zero in Kashmir. District Development Council elections have brought in. So in a sense, center is walking back. And walking back, as you know, is a tough proposition.
Yes.
Because you recall, these very people were called dynasts, irrelevant, not representative of the people, corrupt, supportive of terrorism. Now, all of them have become legal tender. So that's one key issue.
Okay, but both have walked back, right? One who said all that you said, but the second also who have been dealt with pretty badly over the 2 years. And they've come in, it seems, without any preconditions. So is it because, like Sajad Lone said, we have no option? Or is it because they're really reaching out?
It's a situation of David versus Goliath. It is the asymmetry of power. Who has more power to bring to the table? The power to use the military, the power to use the agencies, the power to coerce, the power to humiliate. And what is it that the mainstream people have in their basket that they can offer? They have nothing except to go along. And this is real politics in its classic sense, that the PM is reaching out. And PM, of course, also has external factors. We must not deny.
Yes.
Yeah. Since we don't have time, let me go over those. Firstly, China is in East Ladakh. There is a China-Pakistan collusion, nexus, whatever you term it. US is getting away from Afghanistan. Just 15 days before this meeting, the Assistant Secretary of State dealing with India as part of the Central and South Asia domain, has said there should be progress on the political front in Jammu and Kashmir. And we can say we don't get pressurized by the US, but US is a strategic partner. Now, there are some things it has in mind. Prime Minister Modi has no option in that sense. Conducted tours of Europeans to remember those shikara rides for them overlooking the Zabarwan Lake, and all the photographs came in the media. They were not allowed to meet these leaders. And now they are saying, good, you're doing it because you didn't allow us to go. Now you're doing it. I also want to suggest because there is so much kind of propaganda about how terrorism has been eliminated. Now let me quote you figures of the Ministry of Home Affairs and the DGP of JNK. In 2018, 215 people were killed. In 2019, 152 people were killed, of whom 120 were locals. Mark this point. In 2020, that is last year, 203 people were killed, of whom 166 were locals. In the 5 months period that you take on 18, 19, and 20, or 19, 20, and 21, we look at 101 in 19, 78 in 20, and 52 till now in 20. So the figures of killings, we can always, manipulate. Incidents have reduced, but when I give you grenade attacks, they have increased. More people are joining militancy. So this is, why am I quoting this? This is also a factor that the union government has realized that you cannot do the hard way in Kashmir anymore. Point of no return has come. So
now that's something you and your committee have been saying for a long time, right? Shwat Sinha, you and others have been constantly saying that you have to have a dialogue. Why are you doing this? Because Kashmir has always shown it over and over again that people have had to go back to a dialogue. There's a resilience and a resistance there, which is very difficult somehow for people to understand in Delhi, isn't that?
I agree with you, but let me put a counterpoint to help your viewers understand this better. Dialogue for the sake of dialogue means nothing. Dialogue with a purpose, with a creativity, with an imagination in Jammu and Kashmir, in terms of resolving the issue, meeting the requirements of the people, addressing their angst, their despair, and their horrible anger. Horrible anger. I mean, that's persistent. We have been putting it out in the reports. So, if this dialogue is taken forward, if this is a photo op for the world to see, look, the Union Government of India has moved forward in addressing the needs of the people of Kashmir by way of mainstream political parties being engaged. But phase 2, phase 3, phase 4 have to be moved forward productively. And we see that at the moment, round 1 of yesterday's meeting has gone clearly to the center. Clearly to the center.
So now, why would you say that? That is because Article 370 wasn't taken up, and even on statehood, there was no real commitment. And the Prime Minister has basically asked all of them to participate in the delimitation process. So there's been nothing more than that, right?
Yeah, that is you sort of address the essence, but the devil, as they say, is in the detail.
Yeah.
Delimitation was the elephant in the room. Why? I think, as Umar Abdullah rightly pointed out, and I think supported, of course, by Mehbooba Mufti as well, that why are you, on the one hand, 5th of August, you sought to integrate J&K with India. And for all nationwide delimitation included West Bengal and Assam. You held election there where it was due. Delimitation exercise had been announced with Jammu and Kashmir, also for West Bengal and Assam. Why are we holding the delimitation in those two states and letting ahead with the election, but insisting that delimitation is a prerequisite to the election? This is the first point, and I think it justifiably rouses suspicions in the minds of the people. I don't have to go into detail. You are such an iconic journalist, you know what I'm hinting at. So therefore, the division of sport very delicate balance of the state between Jammu and Kashmir will go towards Jammu.
Right.
Now, I think this is an area where, as I said, if they are doing dialogue for the sake of dialogue, nothing happens. If you're doing dialogue to address the needs of the people, then as has been suggested by Farooq himself in the meeting to the Prime Minister, can you please rethink on delimitation? Because otherwise also, delimitation is being addressed by Deputy Commissioner. It's a bureaucratic delimitation. There are no MLAs in the
Right.
state.
So what about
The MPs have boycotted.
Right.
But now we also, as you said, the mainstream has also given in on a bit. I do not know what will be the outcome, but I think Farooq Abdullah saying that we will consider joining the Delimitation Commission will actually legally cut the feet from under his plea before the Supreme Court that he doesn't recognize the Reorganization Act of 2019.
That's very interesting. Yes.
Because that is what is the basis of delimitation. Secondly, and more importantly, he has gone on record, in fact, given a policy direction that, like for the rest of the nation, 2026 is our time for delimitation. Until 5th August, Reorganization Act not only increased the seats by 7 for the MLA, because 4 seats went to Ladakh, but also introduced this delimitation commission. The last, I think I'll finish there. You're perhaps going to be running short of time. What will decide the fate of the follow-up of yesterday's meeting is the sequencing. Because Amit Shah and PM have been talking about delimitation, elections, and then statehood. This is not going to resonate positively with the mainstream leadership. They are agonizing. As I talk to you now, they are agonizing over it. Farooq Saab is still in Delhi. He hasn't gone back to Srinagar. But I think 2 days from now, there'll be a meeting in Srinagar. Because one is this delimitation, legality, constitutionality, and the political viability for him vis-a-vis the voters who will have to vote him in the elections that will follow sometime. And secondly, and more importantly, it will cut the ground from under the petition, as I said, in the Supreme Court. So we'll have to wait and watch. I think too early as they say.
It's too early, but you're not very optimistic. I mean, everything.
At this point of time, it's very difficult. You know Kashmir as much, perhaps much more than I do. But Kashmir has seen these ups and downs for years and decades. Right. This is a photo of external showcasing and some internal realization for a move forward with the mainstream. But as I said earlier, all the cards are with the center. How many cards is it willing to give away for a quid pro quo or some reconciliation with the valley? Otherwise, all that I talked about earlier will remain by way of anger and alienation, including the data that I gave you on terrorism and its management.
Thank you so much. This was really valuable. Bye. Thank you. Kashmir is a complexity that governments in New Delhi have failed to understand. And some have made colossal blunders, because of which not just Kashmiris, but Indian democracy has paid a price. It is very clear from the meeting yesterday that Article 370 is off the table. No one really raised it, or even if they raised it, it was not done in a very serious manner, in the sense that all have agreed that it should remain with the courts and the court decision will be taken as final as and when it comes. So what was on the table? Delimitation, to which the Prime Minister committed himself and the government, and asked for the cooperation and support of the other political parties at the meeting, which included the Congress and the Gupkar Alliance. And of course, statehood. That was an issue that was raised by all the Kashmiri parties as well as the Congress, and to which no one from the government really committed themselves. So what is the issue? What is the problem? It's the sequencing now in these talks. Is it going to be delimitation, election, statehood, as the Prime Minister and others in his government have indicated? Or is it going to be statehood and then delimitation and elections. It is not very clear. This is what they're going to be talking about if they talk again. Both sides were wary, both were cautious. There was a deficit of trust, and yet all came out saying it was a great meeting. So we have to see how this proceeds, because it is, after all, Kashmir that we are talking about. And where Kashmir is concerned, the morrow is never predictable. Thank you.